Xbox 360 was home of some of the best budget titles available. Deadly Premonition, which happens to be one of my guilty pleasure games, Earth Defense Force 2017, which I have never played but I want to because it looks mindless fun even to this day, and Bullet Witch. I remember getting Bullet Witch on release date and I ended up liking it. Yeah, it had frame rate issues and some weird game design choices, but it was still an enjoyable experience for me. To drive this point home, achievements on Xbox have points associated with them, and back then the developers could assign up to 1000 points to each game. Bullet Witch was notorious for assigning just one single point for finishing the game on the hardest difficulty setting, and you know what? I unlocked it. And not just that, I unlocked every achievement in the game. So yeah, I just wanted to show you all that I was a fan of the game and the character. Not the biggest fan, but definitely one of those who wanted to see a sequel that unfortunately never came. It was in 2018 when the game popped up on Steam with little to no fanfare. I came across it by accident in 2020 and ended up purchasing it. Part of me just wanted to relive the experience again. So here's the question. Is Bullet Witch still an enjoyable experience in 2021 on PCs that are more powerful than the console it was built for? Buckle up, people, because I'm about to give you my honest opinions on a little game that could have been a gem called Bullet Witch. Bullet Witch came out in 2006 on Xbox 360, and it didn't fare well with the critics. Look, don't get me wrong, I loved the game back then, and even I'm not going to say that the game was perfect, it was far from it. Aside of the game design issues that I will get into in a few minutes, some issues were hardware related. Xbox 360 was capable of doing some amazing things, but it was not exactly a beast of a machine. So I was looking forward to the PC version, hoping that they may have sorted out some of the issues the game had on the console. Well, they resolved some of them, but ended up creating a whole lot more. Let's get one thing out of the way here. The original Bullet Witch was developed by Cavia Studios. Unfortunately, the studio closed its doors in 2010. This PC port is handled by Marvelous and published by XSeed. Before I jump in gameplay, let me tackle the story here. If you're one of those who don't want the story to be spoiled at all, jump to the timestamp shown on the screen right now because I will be venturing into spoiler territory here. You have been warned. Bullet Witch starts off very strong with a pre-rendered cutscene of a man sacrificing himself for some unknown reasons. What follows after that is a montage of news clips detailing some of the things going wrong around the world, complete with a number of deaths. Fast forward to 2013 and we see some enemies mercilessly execute a couple of civilians. We are then introduced to the protagonist of the game, Alicia, but not as Bullet Witch. Yeah, she is the Bullet Witch, but I gotta say, no one in the game ever referred to her as such. Anyways, Alicia has this spiritual guide that seems to be talking to her through her journey. At this point, it is not revealed to us why Alicia is doing what she's doing or how she got her powers, but I guess we're going along for the ride. Making our way through the suburbs and blowing up tanks along the way, we end up in the big city where we meet Maxwell Cougar. No, I'm not kidding, the creators legit called a character in the game Maxwell Cougar.
I'm in charge of these troops. I'm Maxwell Cougar.
Alicia joins forces with Maxwell, and no, I'm not going to say his surname again no matter how hard the temptation hits me. They make their way through the city and meet the big baddie who we are told to be is super strong.
This is bad. We're at a disadvantage. You must run.
I can still fight.
Silence. Have you forgotten that our goal is to destroy them all? You can't defeat it as you are now.
Because we are not strong enough yet to take him on, we have no choice but to retreat. We make our exit through the sewage tunnels because back then we needed a sewer mission in games. Alicia and Maxwell fight their way to the hideout and find out it's been overrun. Maxwell shows Alicia a diary of the same man we saw in the opening cutscene who offered himself as a sacrifice. Apparently he's responsible for opening some sort of gateway for the demons to come through. He is a vessel, and if Alicia and Maxwell manage to destroy that vessel, they will be able to stop these demons from coming through. Then we move on to the airport, because back then we also needed an airport level in our games.
Remember, no Russian.
The rest of the game sees us making our way to the forest where the vessel is, and this is where we learn that the man performed this ritual to bring his dead daughter back to life, who died in a plane crash. So how does it concern our Bullet Witch? Because Alicia is that man's daughter.
Why couldn't you just let me die in peace? Why? The daughter you knew, she's dead. What you see here isn't your beloved daughter. You see someone who fights to make up for the endless crimes laid at her feet. A witch.
Alicia plugs her old man and makes her way back to the big city, which is falling apart. No, really, it is falling apart. We take on the big meanie, watch Maxwell flirt with Alicia, and the game ends. I have to say, aside from that one origin point in the story, there really isn't much that tells us about Alicia or how she got her powers, where she got them from, why is she fighting the demon, the voice in her head. None of that is ever explained in the game. This is why I feel that the game had perfect setup for a franchise, because all those questions could have been answered in the sequels. But as far as the story for this game is concerned, it's paper thin and serves its purpose of taking the player from one point to another. Because the story is pretty much basic, the length of the game is also quite short. I think I managed to complete the game in 5 hours or so. Once you have beaten the game, you can play these concept missions which are set in the campaign levels with certain objectives that you need to complete. But aside from that, there really isn't much to Bullet Witch. The writing is terrible in the game, no joke. The dialogues are cheesy and just as bad, but I will say they add a certain charm to the game, one that you can only expect from a budget title. Same goes for voice acting as well. Alicia is the only one that sounds a bit in line with her character. She sounds cold, which suits her character. However, I must add here, she did not have many lines to speak. Maxwell Cougar, oh my god, I just said his name, just sounds way too enthusiastic for someone who is leading a resistance against demons to prevent the end of the world. I mean, it was not bad, but it just sounded more funny than convincing. If the developers wanted me not to take the character seriously, then they did a pretty good job. The voice that spoke in Alicia's head was alright as well. Kind of reminded me of the voice speaking in Jackie Estacado's head in The Darkness.
He must be the one who made that shield. How pathetic.
I would have appreciated if the developers recorded more lines for the NPCs, because I was getting a bit tired of listening to the same target spotted line by soldiers that fought alongside me. On the other hand, enemies had some brilliant lines to say when I took them out. The music is a bit of a hit and miss in this game, and I really don't know how to feel about it. The background music that played in the game was alright. Nothing too fancy, but I remember turning the volume down in the options menu. The sound effects were also a mixed bag. Considering the game is called Bullet Witch, I expected the game to have meatier sound effects for guns, but it just wasn't. On the plus side, considering how much shooting I was doing in the game, I never got bored of listening to that sound. Time to move on to gameplay. When you start playing, you will notice you have 2 bars on your screen. One is for your health and the other is for your magic, and your magic bar is very important. As long as you have enough magical points, you can cast spells or reload your ammo. Yes, that explains why you have infinite ammo for your guns. These bars fill up over time, but your MP works differently. Once you unleash one of your bigger spells, a limiter is placed on your MP bar and it recharges only up to that point. If you want the limiter to extend all the way to the max, then you need to kill enemies. I guess that way you're not camping in one place just so you can drop the bigger spells to take care of even the smaller threats. Alicia's broomstick has 4 firing modes. Machine gun, which acts like a standard machine gun. Cannon, which fires more powerful bullets but at slower speed. Shotgun, which is useless for long distance enemies but slightly less useless at close range. And Gatling gun, which is awesome but it takes a lot of your MP to reload. Speaking of magical points, you can cast spells in the game that can give you an advantage over your enemies. You can go for Elemental Shot that fires elemental bullets, Ancient Wall that creates some cover for you, Rose Spear that brings out spikes from the ground that impales enemies Dracula style, Willpower that pushes objects, Sacrifice that can heal NPCs around you, and Raven's Panic that can be used to distract enemies. There are 3 massive spells you can cast. The first one is Lightning that you get in the first mission. The second is Tornado, which you get halfway through.
You can say your prayers inside the vortex of destruction.
And then Meteor, which you get in the last mission.
Return to the earth as ash.
And of the 3, Lightning is the most useful one. The problem is, aside from Magical Wall and Lightning, none of these spells are particularly useful. I'm not saying they're not helpful, they can assist you in battle, but even if you don't purchase them from the upgrade menu, and yes, you need to purchase them first to use them, if you don't purchase them, it's not going to make any kind of difference, because the gameplay mechanic itself is very basic. You go from one part of the level to the next killing monsters. That's it. I know a lot of games follow this gameplay design. Hell, Gears of War had the same idea and it's one of my all-time favorites. The thing is, unlike Gears, Bullet Witch doesn't spice up the action. You will be shooting the same enemies throughout the game. There is only one time when the game does something different, and it's not even that special, but because it was a change from the usual shooting I was doing, it made that part enjoyable. And yes, I'm talking about the part where you have to fight a boss on top of a freaking plane. Yes, you're still shooting, but the setting has been changed and the stakes have been raised. I would have appreciated if the game had more set pieces like this one, but unfortunately it didn't. There are moments where you can see the developers trying to inject the game with set pieces, but there just aren't that many of them. There is a level in the game which looked like something out of a survival horror game, but once again, the developers lost out on creating something unique for that level. And this is where the game slips into mediocrity. Like I said earlier, you will be going from one part of the level to another, shooting the same enemies over and over again. You will have machine gun totting enemies, grenadiers, brutes who charge at you and try to melee you, and snipers. Now, this does not sound bad, but when you are pumping lead into everything and everyone that is trying to kill you, none of these enemy classes matter because your approach will be the same. Shoot them till they stop moving. Aside from enemy soldiers, you will end up going up against these tanks that you can easily take out using lightning spells, gigas, these giants with machine guns that you can take out by shooting them in their hearts. Some gigas will have their chest area reinforced with steel that you can easily break by, you guessed it, shooting at it. There are these big brain floating monsters called walnut heads that use telekinesis to throw objects at you, and yes, you just shoot them. You will also come across an enemy class called screamers. These things emit ghosts that possess NPCs around you and turn them against you. Honestly, I don't know what these possessed creatures are called, but they were truly disturbing. They wiggled around unnaturally and threw fire at me. I have to say these were the most disturbing ones to deal with in the game, but I dealt with them the same way I dealt with every other enemy, pumping them full of lead till they stopped moving. The only time I needed to strategize a little was when I went up against these snipers, because they will literally one-shot you. And when I say strategize, I mean creating a magic wall in front of me and trying to shoot the sniper before he shoots me. That's it. But aside from that, you're not going to need any strategy at all because the AI is dumb in the game. Couple of times I saw the AI run into walls, stand in one place while I stood in plain view, friendly AI just running around and not firing at enemies standing in plain view in front of them, civilian AI just running into enemy fire. The AI is pretty shocking in the game. Now I'm going to give credit where it's due. When Bullet Witch first came out, the highlight of the game was its extreme level of environmental destruction. And while I would not call it extreme, I have played games that had more destructible environments than Bullet Witch. From the top of my head, I can come up with Stranglehold that came out on Xbox 360 and PS3, and Black, which was on PS2 and the original Xbox. However, Bullet Witch does give you some neat moments and levels where you can blow stuff up. These parts do affect the frame rates, but they are fun to watch. Physics also play a huge role in Bullet Witch. You will come across these big brain enemies that can use telekinesis to throw stuff at you. And when you unlock willpower in your spell circle, you can throw stuff at enemies too. Not particularly useful, but fun to watch. There is a menu which you can access to buy upgrades like faster regen for your health points, magical points, making your spells more powerful. You know the spiel. The upgrades stack as well, so whatever you unlock in one difficulty will carry over if you restart the game even on higher difficulty setting. When it comes to level design, I gotta hand it to the developers for trying to diversify the levels a bit, but once again the levels are a bit of a hit and miss. Sometimes they were amazing to look at, sometimes they were so dark I had no idea where the heck I was supposed to go. The foggy forest level was pretty good though. Graphically the game is not a looker. I'm playing the game in 1920 by 1080 and I will put up the system specs of my PC on the screen now. As you can tell, this is the best I could do. Alicia's character model looks stunning. You can tell the developers really put a lot of thought behind her character design. I have to say I never thought leather was my thing, but after Bullet Witch, I guess it is. And it looks like I'm not the only one. When the game first came out in 2006, internet's darling Jessica Chobot, the IGN editor that shot to fame for licking a PSP, also cosplayed as Bullet Witch. So yeah, Alicia's character design is pretty cool. There are additional outfits as well and they're also well designed. There are 5 additional costumes to choose from, not including the default skin. My favorite additional outfit has to be the secretary one. Yes, I know what I'm talking about, please don't kink shame me. I already get that a lot from Infectious Gaming and Donna Anastasia for watching a certain type of anime that involves tentacles. Other character models are serviceable. They're not the best designed or original for that matter, but they get the job done. The enemy character models are distinguishable and you can tell in an instance what you're going to be dealing with. The game has some collision issues, objects getting stuck in mid-air or on other things, and there were some frame rate drops when some of the bigger explosions took place. Bullet Witch also has some pop-in issues where items just magically appear in front of you out of thin air because of the way memory works in this game. Now, the issues I just mentioned here were in Xbox 360 version as well. While frame rate drop was a big issue on the console, I would still not recommend the PC version because of the insane amount of issues this port has. First up, let's get one thing out of the way here. When I say it's a direct Xbox 360 port, I mean it. The people who ported the game did not even bother to change the Xbox 360 controller button mapping. This is what I mean by it. When you open the spell wheel that you can use to select which spell you want to cast, you can clearly see the 360 controller button mapping on the screen. Thank God you can map different keys to the keyboard, but when I first opened the spell wheel, I was confused out of my mind. Another thing which I want to mention here is that when you boot the game, it will give you a dialog box that allows you to tweak your PC experience. Fair enough, I thought I'll start with 1080p even though my screen resolution is 4K. Now you would think the game would open full screen, but it will run in 1920 by 1080, right? Wrong. It never went full screen. Maybe it's an issue with my 1070, but it still is an issue, and you would think such issues should have been ironed out since the game came out in 2018 on PC, but nope, they are still there. I had to switch to 1920 by 1080 resolution on my display setting to get the game going in full screen. Oh, and when you boot the game, like when you are actually in the game, you cannot use your mouse to scroll through the menu. You have to use directional buttons to scroll through the options. Not a big deal, but it does show that the mouse support is pretty limited in the game. There are also some sort of lag as well. I don't know, but a couple of times I pressed the button to fire but nothing happened. Other times Alicia fired like 20 rounds by herself without me pressing any button. Also, the checkpoint system in the game is kind of bugged. It will say checkpoint on screen, and if you are someone like me, you would think the game saved your progress up to that point. Wrong. The game does not save your progress. How do I know? Because at one point the game crashed and I was quite far along the second chapter and I thought, at least I hit the checkpoint. Turned out it did not save my progress. It made a checkpoint so if I died I could restart from that point. But it did not save my progress. God, I hated myself at that point. Oh yeah, the game crashed on me 2 times, so expect some crashes. One time it crashed on me when I paused the game and left the room for something. My system entered in a screensaver mode. I moved my mouse and my system resumed. I tried to unpause the game and it crashed. There are also some sound glitches that I'm sure were not in the original 360 version, but they were very frequent.
Nani?
Man, I hope that thing really is finished for good. You and me did pretty well, huh? But a lot of people have died.
And don't get me started with the issues I had when I tried to connect my Xbox One controller. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't uninstall the game completely. It is riddled with bugs and glitches. How I managed to make it to the end is truly an amazing feat for myself. Bullet Witch on the PC is a mess, and if I have to be honest here, I would only recommend this game if you are a die-hard fan of the original Xbox 360 game. Actually, hold on, if you are a die-hard fan of the game, then it's best you get the game on 360 because I bet that will run better than this PC port. Bullet Witch on PC has a lot of issues, and going by the date when the last pinned post was updated on the community hub, I don't think it will receive any more updates. If you have never played Bullet Witch before, don't buy it. Save yourself some cash or invest in a different alternative. And what could be a better replacement for a witch with a gun that casts spells named Bullet Witch? How about a witch with guns that cast spells named Bayonetta? But really, Bullet Witch on Steam costs £12.99. For an extra £2 you get a product that plays a whole lot better. Now I don't know how Bayonetta performs on PC, but the gameplay is definitely leaps and bounds ahead of Bullet Witch. Or if you want to push it just a little bit more, you can get Devil May Cry 5 for £20, or just about any Devil May Cry game. They're all better than Bullet Witch, except for Devil May Cry 2. Yeah, skip that one. At the end, I'm going to say that I don't think Bullet Witch is a bad game. It had potential, but it's held back by these technical issues that should not have existed on PC. But unfortunately, they do. And because there are other options available on Steam that not only do what Bullet Witch does, but do it better, it is very hard for me to recommend this port to anyone. Well, that brings me to the end of my video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more or if you want to support my channel, please consider subscribing. Let me know in the comment box below what you thought about the video and if you have played the original Bullet Witch. I'm a part-time YouTuber, so your engagement with the channel will help me a lot in the long run. Peace out, angels, and stay awesome.